She chose a break on the very day we were celebrating our love, and I chose a life without her, leaving without a word. Anniversaries meant something to me. Not in the extravagant public display, roses on the hood of the car kind of way, but in the quiet, intentional sort of way. I was always the guy who remembered dates. First kiss. First concert together. The day we bought our first couch. The exact second she said, "I think I love you." I kept a note in my phone of every anniversary because to me those things mattered. They still do. So when I woke up that morning, our 6th anniversary, I didn't expect a parade. Just something. A sticky note on the mirror. A half-burnt piece of toast with "I tried" scribbled on it. Even just a look. Something that said, "I still remember what we're doing here." But instead, I woke up to a text. "I need some space. I think we should take a break." No happy anniversary. No greeting. No explanation. No warmth. Just those words. Blunt. Abrupt. I stared at the screen like it might rearrange itself into something less cruel. Less cold. Didn't. I sat up in bed and read it again. Then again. I checked the time, 7:08 a.m. She'd sent it at 6:59. She was always an early riser, but even for her, that felt strategic. Like she wanted to drop the bomb before I could get a word in. I didn't text back. I didn't know what to say. I just got up, tried to move, tried to breathe. As I walked to the kitchen, the silence in the house felt louder than ever. The kind of silence that didn't come from peace, but from vacancy. Like the love had packed a bag and slipped out during the night. That's when my phone buzzed again. A notification from the banking app. I didn't think anything of it at first. Maybe it was the florist I'd scheduled a delivery with. I opened it without thinking. It wasn't flowers. It was a charge. $274. Dinner for two at a boutique hotel across town. Not just any restaurant, our restaurant. The one I'd had to book 2 months in advance. The one I'd picked out as a surprise for her. Except now she'd already gone. With someone else. The timestamp showed the charge went through the night before. And as if that wasn't enough, like insult hadn't already made itself at home, I turned toward the kitchen counter. 2 wine glasses, still sitting there from the night before. Both used. One with a perfect, careless smear of lipstick, not the color Claire usually wore. This one was darker, deeper, more brazen. I felt nauseous. I reached for the glasses like maybe, just maybe, I was reading into it, but the lipstick was too fresh. The smell of Cabernet still hung in the air like it was mocking me. The bottle was gone. The dishwasher was empty. No dinner plates. Just the glasses left out like an afterthought. Or a trophy. I stood there for a long time, staring at them, like they might offer some kind of clarity. They didn't. All they offered was confirmation. I was alone. Not just physically. Emotionally. Spiritually. I hadn't been part of this marriage for a while now. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. I sat at the kitchen table, phone still in my hand, her message still on the screen. I stared at it until the words blurred. "I think we should take a break." The word break pulsed in my mind like a bruise being touched over and over again. A break. From what? From love? From commitment? From decency? At noon, she returned. No warning. No apology. No shift in tone. She walked through the front door like she hadn't detonated our relationship hours earlier with a single text. She wore sunglasses, even though it was overcast. Her hair was done, makeup flawless. Too flawless for someone who'd claimed to need space. She looked surprised to see me still there, like she'd expected me to be gone. Maybe she wanted to avoid this part, the part where she had to look me in the eye. "Hey," she said, setting her purse down. That's all. Just hey. I didn't respond right away. I looked at her. Really looked. Searching for something in her face that would tell me this was a mistake. That she was scared. That she'd lost herself for a second and wanted to take it all back. But there was nothing. Just a cool indifference. "I saw the text," I said. She pulled off her sunglasses and set them on the counter, next to the wine glasses she hadn't bothered to clean. "I figured. I also saw the hotel charge." She paused for a beat, just long enough to confirm everything I feared. Then she smiled. Not kindly, not apologetically, just smiled. You checked my bank activity? That was her response. Not shock, not guilt, accusation, as if I'd crossed a line by noticing the one she bulldozed. I wasn't checking. It popped up, I said quietly, just like the lipstick on those glasses. She turned to them, finally acknowledging their presence like they'd just appeared. She didn't touch them, didn't explain. Instead, she folded her arms across her chest. Do you even hear yourself right now? She asked, voice laced with condescension. You're spinning stories because you're insecure. You always do this. I blinked. Insecure. She'd spent the night drinking wine with someone else, left evidence in the open, used our anniversary as the exact moment to pull away, and I was the problem? I didn't argue. I think part of me knew there was no point. This wasn't about logic. This wasn't even about guilt. This was about rewriting the narrative. If she could convince herself that I was paranoid, that I was controlling, then she didn't have to confront what she'd really done. So I didn't fight. I didn't yell. I didn't ask her who he was. Instead, I nodded. Just once. And something inside me shifted, permanently. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was the soft, subtle click of a door closing. Not the front door. Not our marriage. Just the door between who I'd been with her and who I'd have to become to survive this. She wanted a break. And right there, without saying a word, I took mine too. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just internally. I stepped away from the version of me that waited for her. That defended her. That kept believing, even when it was obvious she'd already left me emotionally. She went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen. I stared at those glasses until the sun started to go down, and I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I didn't feel hungry. I didn't feel much of anything. I just kept hearing her words from the text in my head. I think we should take a break. On the one day that was supposed to remind us why we started, she chose to pause, to disengage, to disappear. But here's the part she'll never understand. When someone breaks something delicate, glass, trust, love, sometimes the person they break it with doesn't pick it back up. Sometimes they just walk away from the pieces. After that day, after the text and the wine glasses and the blank stare in her eyes, I stopped pretending. I didn't confront her again. I didn't ask for answers she clearly wasn't willing to give. Instead, I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I paid attention. And once I did, I couldn't unsee the signs. It was like every memory I'd glossed over for the sake of love suddenly sharpened in focus. There was the location sharing. We used to share ours by default. Not because we were possessive, but because we liked knowing we were safe. It was practical, normal, and then one day it just disappeared. I remember asking her about it. "Oh, that's weird," she'd said, frowning at her phone. "Must have been a bug. I'll fix it later." She never did, and I never brought it up again. There was her phone, once a casual accessory, now glued to her hand. She used to leave it around the house, on the kitchen table, on the nightstand, in the bathroom. She didn't care who saw her texts, but slowly, without making a big deal out of it, the phone became sacred. Locked with Face ID, notifications hidden, always face down, and God forbid I walked by while she was mid-text. She'd tilt the screen away like a teenager hiding something from her parents. Then there were the late-night showers. That was new. Claire wasn't a night shower person. Mornings were her thing. That's when she played her music and spent too long with the conditioner in. But suddenly, she'd come home exhausted from wherever she'd been and head straight to the bathroom. Not a word, not a kiss, just the water running at 10:30, sometimes 11 p.m., like she was washing off a version of herself she didn't want me to see. I tried not to read into it at first, but then I started counting. In the span of 2 months, she took more nighttime showers than she had in our entire 6 years together. One night I asked her why. "Stress," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "Water helps me sleep." It was the same week I noticed she had stopped wearing her wedding ring. She claimed it was for comfort, that the band was tight, that it left a mark on her finger. Which fine, maybe it did. but it had never bothered her before. We even had it resized 2 years ago. Now, it sat untouched in a ceramic bowl by the bathroom sink, collecting dust while she forgot to put it back on. There were other little things, fragments I hadn't thought about until now, like how she stopped asking about my day. That sounds so small, right? But for 5 years straight, she asked me every single day. Even when she was tired, even when she was mad, she always asked. Then she just stopped. And when I tried to tell her things, small stories from work, something funny I saw online, even updates about my family, she'd nod absent-mindedly and say, "That's nice," never looking up, never following up, never really listening. I became background noise in my own marriage. And she became something else entirely. She started dressing differently. Subtler at first, new blouses, form-fitting jeans, silk camisoles under cardigans. Then the heels came out of storage. The red lipstick reappeared. Not for our dates, we didn't have those anymore. For errands. For coffee with friends. For quick Target runs that took 2 hours and ended with no receipts. Then came the receipts I did find. One was from a jewelry store we'd never been to together. Claire didn't even like jewelry. Another was from a boutique skincare spa miles away, near a condo complex with short-term rentals. I remember noticing that one because she told me she was working late that night. When I asked what she did at the office, she couldn't even remember which client call she'd been on. But the most telling thing? She was always tired. Too tired to talk. Too tired to cook. Too tired to go for walks like we used to. Too tired to plan our annual fall trip to her parents' cabin. Something she used to look forward to all year. Suddenly, even the traditions didn't matter. Everything that made us feel like us. Game nights, lazy Sundays, pumpkin carving, vanished behind that same excuse. I'm just exhausted. But her exhaustion was selective. She still had energy to scroll TikTok for hours. Still had energy to laugh at memes her coworkers sent her. Still had energy to spend half the night whispering into her phone with her back turned toward me. I remember one night I got up to use the bathroom around 2 a.m. and saw the glow of her screen under the covers. She didn't see me. I stood in the hallway and just watched for a moment. She was smiling. Not a tired smile. Not a polite one. It was that dumb, helpless kind of grin you wear when someone makes you feel seen. When someone says exactly the thing you didn't know you needed to hear. I hadn't seen her smile like that at me in over a year. I didn't say anything. I just went back to bed, laid awake, and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out how long I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. Maybe the worst part of all this was how convincing she had been. For a while, she kept up the motions. Kiss on the cheek before work. Casual texts throughout the day. The occasional "love you" tossed over her shoulder on the way out the door. But I could feel it. The slow erosion. Like standing in a house that still looked intact, but the foundation had been eaten away by termites. You don't see it at first. You don't want to. But then one day your foot goes through the floor, and all you're left with is dust and questions. Was there a specific moment it started? A crack that widened into a chasm? Or was it death by 1,000 cuts? 1,000 lies, omissions, half-truths? Maybe it was the day she stopped holding my hand in public. Or the night she flinched when I reached for her shoulder in bed. Or maybe it was me. Maybe I missed the early signs. The ones that aren't dramatic, just subtle. Like when "I miss you" became "don't wait up." Like when the music in the car stopped being our playlist and started being hers. Like when she stopped saying goodnight and just rolled over. There's a kind of loneliness that hits you when you're still technically in a relationship. The kind that's worse than being alone. Because at least when you're alone, you're not being lied to. At least then, the silence is honest. But this was a different kind of silence. A wee *p* nice silence. The kind that tells you without words that you're no longer needed, just tolerated. Every memory, every suspicion, every gut feeling I'd buried came rushing back like a flood. And with each passing day, I realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And being right never felt so awful. Suspicion is a slow poison. You try to ignore it, you try to keep moving, but it eats at you quietly, persistently, until it becomes unbearable. And that's exactly where I was, the moment when suspicion curdles into something else. When you're no longer asking, am I imagining this? And instead asking, how deep does it go? That turning point came with a wristwatch. Claire had a smartwatch, a birthday gift from me 2 years ago. She wore it religiously, and I used to think it was because she liked counting steps or checking messages on the go. Turns out, the watch did a lot more than I realized. One night, she left it on the charger in the bathroom. She was asleep, or pretending to be, and I just stared at it. That little black screen, pulsing with stored data. I hadn't touched her things in weeks. But something about that night, the way she came home wearing a different perfume, the text she quickly deleted when she thought I wasn't looking, broke something in me. I picked up the watch and synced it with an old iPad I had lying in my nightstand. Took seconds. She'd never disabled the backup settings. That's when everything started to unravel. Not in a scream, not in a crash, but in a quiet, methodical, undeniable way. First came the GPS trails. Claire had been taking detours. Her daily commutes to work were longer than they should have been. Her lunch breaks weren't spent at the office cafeteria like she claimed. There were regular pings along the Riverside district, where loft apartments rented by the night were easy to come by. Always the same area. Always at the same time, Thursdays around 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Twice a week, for almost 2 months. I pulled up the location history and screen recorded it all. My hands were shaking, but my focus had never been clearer. Next came the text logs. The watch didn't store entire threads, but it kept partial messages, enough to see names and fragments. Most were from someone saved under the name J. At first glance, it looked innocent, but the tone changed quickly. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You left your jacket in the car. Still smells like you. Tonight? Same place? The texts were spaced days apart, but there was a rhythm. Private song I hadn't been invited to hear. And then there were the fitness logs. Most people wouldn't think to check them, but the watch had a heart rate monitor, and it showed elevated activity every time she visited that address by the river. Paired with her location history, it told a story more int asterisk mate than words. Her pulse would spike and stay high for about an hour. She wasn't at a gym. She wasn't jogging. She was with him, whoever he was. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the kitchen, watch in hand, listening to her breathing upstairs. Deep, calm, guiltless. Or maybe not. Maybe she was just better at hiding it than I ever gave her credit for. The next morning I checked the dashcam in her car. It records automatically when the ignition is on, and she had no idea. I'd installed it 2 years ago after a hit and run in our neighborhood. She rarely thought about it, and I had all the footage stored to a cloud drive. I scrubbed through the files, starting with the last few Thursdays. And there it was, her pulling up in front of a loft building, cutting the engine. A minute later, a man walked up to the car. I paused the footage and zoomed in as best I could. He wasn't anyone I recognized. Dark hair, clean cut, mid-30s, confident walk. He slid into the passenger seat like he belonged there. No hesitation. They sat there for a minute, talking. Then he leaned across and kissed her. It wasn't a polite kiss, not a hesitant kiss. It was the kind of kiss people save for hotel rooms and stolen afternoons. I watched in silence. Watched her tuck her hand behind his neck like it was second nature. Watched her laugh against his mouth like I didn't exist. Then they got out and walked inside together, his jacket slung over her shoulder. I felt nothing. Not in the way people talk about emotional numbness, I mean literal, physical nothing. Like my blood had stopped moving. Like my body didn't belong to me anymore. I sat there, blinking at the paused image, not because I didn't believe it, but because it made too much sense. Everything added up. I kept digging. Her credit card statements showed charges for breakfast for 2 at a boutique hotel downtown. The same one from our anniversary, the one I'd reserved and she had used for someone else. Same table, same tasting menu, just a different man sitting across from her. I confirmed it by calling the hotel and asking about receipts. I posed as a confused guest trying to identify an overcharge. They emailed me a PDF with the last 3 transactions on her name. Every one of them was for 2. One of them even had a handwritten note from the server, "Happy early anniversary," with a smiley face. The irony made my throat tighten. I pulled up the building on Google Maps and checked the listing. The loft was part of a furnished rental complex, billed as perfect for executive stays and romantic weekends. Everything about it was sleek and staged. It wasn't where people lived, it was where people escaped. And she had escaped, all right, from our life. From me. I took *TS, printed everything, labeled it, organized it, not for revenge, not even for confrontation. I just needed the facts, the undeniable, the unshakable, because I knew if I ever did ask her, she'd twist it. She'd cry. She'd accuse me of spying. She'd say I was paranoid. She'd say it didn't mean what it looked like. But I had pictures, timestamps, video, receipts, the kind of truth that doesn't budge when someone cries. Still, I couldn't stop. I needed to know how far it went. So I pulled old backups of our shared cloud account. One she'd forgotten about when she got her new phone. Buried deep in the folder were audio clips. She'd used voice memos to record things, reminders, ideas, sometimes messages to herself. But one of them stood out. 38 seconds. Labeled, Jason_Skyline. I hesitated. Then I hit play. Her voice came through first soft, playful, whispering something about the view. Then his voice, deeper, calm. He said her name like it was a secret. Then the sound of wind, laughter, a muffled kiss. Jason. That was his name. Or at least the one he gave her. I closed the file. The truth wasn't just undeniable now, it was complete. The evidence wasn't a puzzle anymore. It was a mural. One she painted behind my back while I was still staring at the canvas of our marriage, wondering where the color had gone. That night, Claire came home late, said traffic was terrible, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted anything from the fridge. I said no. Then I watched her pull out leftovers, hum a song I didn't recognize, and laugh at a text while her phone lit up with a message from Jay. That's when I knew I had every piece I needed. And maybe, just maybe, I had more than even she knew. If you'd asked me back then what I expected to find after pulling all that evidence together, I'd have said, closure. Not peace, not forgiveness, just a simple, brutal end. She had cheated, I had proof, and we were done. Straight lines, no questions. But the thing about digging for the truth is that sometimes you don't hit the bottom. Sometimes you break through into another chamber you didn't even know existed. That's what happened with Jason. It started with the number. I'd copied it from one of her text logs on the smartwatch. It showed up under J. But the fragments of messages made it obvious who he was, the man from the dashcam, the man from the loft, the man from the audio clip whispering to her over the skyline. I told myself I wouldn't call it. That I wasn't the kind of person who called the other man. But one night, curiosity beat dignity. I dialed. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. A bland, automated greeting. No name, no personality, just a digital wall. I tried again the next day. Same thing. Tried from a different phone. Same thing. Something about that unsettled me. It didn't fit the man in the videos, the confident one, the one with the easy smile and the familiar way he touched her. He didn't seem like the type to hide behind burner phones. He seemed established, real, present. So I dug deeper. I took one of the photos from the dashcam, the clearest frame of his face I could find, and ran it through a reverse image search. Not because I expected much, but because I had to try. First, nothing came up. Then, on the 4th attempt, something flickered in the results. A stock image on a marketing website. The same face, same hair, same jawline. Except this time he was wearing a suit and holding a clipboard, advertising executive coaching for startups. My stomach dropped. I clicked the image. The caption read, "Model image, for demonstration purposes only. Model image, not a real person." I ran it again on a different service. Same result. The photo appeared on multiple unrelated sites, a fake dating profile, an article about business travel, even a meme template. It wasn't him. It wasn't anyone. It was a stock photo. I sat there at my desk, staring at his face, and realized I didn't know who I'd been watching in those videos anymore. I moved on to the number. This time, instead of calling, I looked up the carrier information. It traced back to an online service based out of Nevada, one of those apps that gives you temporary phone numbers and auto-deletes texts. Not illegal, but shady. The kind scammers use. The kind cheaters use. Or the kind used on cheaters. Piece by piece, the edges started to curl. Next, I looked at the charges on Claire's account again. Not the restaurants or the hotels, the small ones. The ones I'd ignored at first. They repeated every month, irregular amounts under vague names like RC Services LLC and in * Mate Solutions. They weren't big enough to catch my eye before. $39. $99 here, $59. $99 there, but they lined up perfectly with the timeline of her new behavior. I Googled them. The first was an online subscription for something called Romantic Concierge. The second was a payment processor for personal fantasy arrangements. Both were run out of the same business park in Reno. I clicked through the sites. What I saw didn't even look like cheating in the traditional sense. It looked like a service, a marketplace, a place where people paid to have experiences scripted for them, fake partners, fake messages, fake photos, even fake meetups. They called it immersive companionship. Everything tailored to the customer's preferences. Everything plausible enough to pass for real. And then I realized, Claire wasn't just having an affair. She was buying one. The Jason she was texting? He didn't exist. The number linked to a messaging platform staffed by paid actors and AI-generated scripts. The loft by the river? One of their stage sets. They rented furnished spaces to make the illusion feel authentic. Even the voice memo I'd found had traces of splicing when I listened back with headphones. Like someone had layered pre-recorded audio with real background noise to make it sound spontaneous. I scrolled through testimonials on the site, my heart pounding. I wanted to feel desired again. It's like falling in love without consequences. The perfect secret escape. They didn't even hide what it was. It was right there, marketed like a gym membership or a vacation package. They sold affair experiences to people who wanted the thrill without the risk of a real person. A fantasy you could pause, resume, or cancel like a Netflix show. Claire had signed up under her own name. I found the confirmation email buried in her old backups. The subject line read, "Welcome to your discreet companion journey." It listed her preferences, age range, hobbies, character archetype. She'd literally chosen Jason, like she was picking a movie character. The system generated his profile, photos, even a custom playlist for them to share, all for $399 a month. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For weeks, I had been picturing a real man. Someone with a job, a car, a jacket she'd started wearing. Someone I could hate. Someone I could blame. Instead, she'd poured our marriage into a script run by strangers. She wasn't sneaking off to another life. She was paying people to build a fake one for her. And yet, somehow, it still hurt. Maybe more. Because cheating with a real person at least makes a certain ugly kind of sense. It's messy. It's human. It's betrayal, yes, but it's rooted in reality. This was something else. She had turned our life into a performance and cast herself in a different story. One where I didn't exist. One where she could be whoever she wanted, with someone who wasn't even real. It was like finding out you'd been replaced not by another person, but by an idea. That night, I watched her sit on the couch, texting, smiling. She thought she was talking to Jason. She thought he was somewhere across town, waiting for her at the loft. She thought the messages were personal. In reality, they were coming from a script or an underpaid employee in a call center, hitting send on pre-written lines. I felt a strange mixture of pity and rage. Not for what she was doing, I'd already passed that stage, but for how far she'd gone to build a fantasy. How easily she'd spent our money to construct a world where she could pretend to be desired while ignoring the man sitting 10 feet away. The last shred of doubt disappeared when I cut off the payments. I logged into our joint account and canceled the subscription. Took less than a minute. No confirmation email, no warning. Just a blank page and a line of text. Your account has been successfully terminated. And with that, Jason vanished. The messages stopped mid-conversation. The number went dead. The loft reservation disappeared from her calendar, like a stage being struck after the final performance. I watched her that night as she stared at her phone, waiting for a reply that would never come. Her brow furrowed. She sent another message, checked the number, refreshed the app. Nothing. She looked lost, small, like someone had taken a toy away from a child. And I sat there, silent, holding everything I knew like a blade behind my back. Because in that moment, I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was the only person in the world who knew her affair wasn't an affair at all. It was a paid illusion. And soon it would be over. Not with a confrontation, but with a collapse she couldn't explain away. After everything I'd learned, after realizing Claire's affair was less about passion and more about performance, I should have felt vindicated, maybe even smug. But the truth was I felt hollow. Hollow in that way people do when they've been screaming in a soundproof room. I had all the evidence, all the facts, and still no one had heard me, not even her. I didn't want an apology anymore, not even a confession. I wanted out, but I wasn't going to storm out in a blaze of fury, not after how carefully she'd orchestrated her escape from reality. No, if Claire could script a whole affair, then I could write my own ending. Quiet, strategic, unstoppable. That's when I started planning. The first step was simple: evidence consolidation. I compiled everything: the location logs from her smartwatch, the GPS maps from the loft visits, *TS of her texts with Jason, audio files, the stock image match, the customer service receipts from the romantic concierge platform. I organized it all into a timeline, clean, factual, and bulletproof. Then I took it one step further. I had the entire document notarized. A friend from work had a connection who helped me file it as a sworn statement, just in case. After that came financial disentanglement. Over the course of a week, I rerouted my direct deposit into a private account she didn't know existed. I closed the joint credit card and removed myself from anything she could access. The streaming services, the meal delivery kits, the pet food subscriptions, anything connected to my money, I shut it down. And when I got to the billing dashboard for the romantic concierge service, I saw her account still live, still active, even though the number had gone silent. I clicked cancel subscription. The confirmation screen popped up immediately. We're sorry to see you go. Your companion experience will end within 24 hours. I sat back in my chair and imagined her receiving that silence. Not from me, but from the fantasy world she'd built. The next time she opened her app, there'd be no Jason, no flirty messages, no morning playlist curated for her mood, just a dead screen. Then came the living situation. I couldn't stand being in that house anymore, not with the ghosts she'd left behind in every room. So I found a small apartment about 20 minutes away, nothing fancy, just quiet, clean, untouched. I signed the lease under my own name, moved in little by little over the course of a week. Things she wouldn't notice missing: socks, notebooks, a favorite mug, tools, old clothes, backups of important documents. By the time I packed the last box, I realized something strange. I didn't miss the house. It had been ours once. But somewhere along the way it had become a set. Just like the loft. Just like Jason. A stage for pretending. Step 4. Legal preparation. I hired a lawyer. A quiet, competent woman named Elisa who spoke like she'd seen it all before. When I explained the situation, she didn't blink. Just asked for the timeline, the documents, and the date I wanted to file. I don't want to fight, I told her. I want it clean. I want it over. You'll have it, she said. But don't expect her to take it gracefully. People who live in fantasies usually don't. Elisa had the divorce papers drawn up in less than a week. Irreconcilable differences. No alimony. No assets contested. I didn't care about the house or the furniture or the stuff she bought while playing make-believe. She could have it. I just wanted freedom. All that was left was timing. I picked a weekend she was planning another retreat. She'd hinted at it days before, said she needed a weekend to reset. and that she'd probably stay at that place by the river again. Of course she would. Except this time there would be no river. No Jason. Just a dead number and a woman trying to revive a ghost that never existed. I waited until she packed her overnight bag and left. I didn't say anything. Just kissed her on the forehead. The last time I'd touch her. And watched her drive away. Then I went to work. I printed the entire evidence file. Bound it. Put a sticky note on the cover that simply read, "You'll want to sit down." I placed it on the kitchen table, along with the notarized timeline and the signed divorce papers. Then, for good measure, I added a photo, the one from the dashcam where she kissed Jason in the passenger seat, his face inches from hers, not knowing he wasn't real. On top of everything, I placed her wedding ring. She hadn't worn it in months, but I found it sitting in the bowl by the bathroom sink. Tarnished. Forgotten. I cleaned it with a soft cloth, not out of sentiment. Just symbolism. One last little piece of her double life brought into focus. Then I left. I didn't write a note. I didn't text. I didn't block her. I just left the house like I was walking out of a meeting that had run too long. Calm. Finished. The drive to my apartment was quiet. No music. No GPS. Just me and the sound of tires on pavement. And when I stepped into that tiny place, with its white walls and empty shelves, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not joy. Not closure. Just space. Real space. The kind that wasn't built on a lie. Over the next few days, I expected the fallout. And it came. The first message was a question. Did you cancel my subscription? Then, something's wrong with Jason. Then, what is this file? Then nothing. Then everything. Texts. Missed calls. Emails. Voicemails. All from Claire. All frantic. All trying to claw her way out of the hole she dug for herself. But I didn't respond. Because what could I possibly say? She hadn't cheated with a person. She cheated with an idea. And somehow that was worse. She hadn't fallen in love with someone else. She had bought a fantasy because she didn't have the courage to face reality. Our reality. She wanted attention, affection, escape. And instead of working through it with me, instead of being honest, she outsourced it. And then she lied. To me. To herself. To a digital voice that was never real. So no, I didn't answer her. Not then. Not after. I let her sit with the silence the way I had for months. I let her wonder what parts I'd known and when. I let her scroll through old messages and realize every line Jason had sent her was a line someone else had paid to write. I let her live in the reality she'd spent so much money trying to avoid. I let the fantasy collapse. Not with a scream. Not with an accusation. With silence. And when I woke up the next morning in my new apartment, made coffee in a chipped mug, and sat on the floor with no furniture and no obligations, I felt something strange. Not freedom. Not quite. But something close. The beginning of it. When Jason disappeared, Claire unraveled. She hovered anxiously, tried to fake affection, asked hollow questions, and clung to routines she once neglected. Her texts turned pleading. Her eyes scanned me for warmth that wasn't there. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. Fear of the silence. Fear of being exposed. Her fantasy was gone, and now she was left with the reality she'd abandoned, and me no longer willing to play along. Before her next retreat, I left a folder on the kitchen table. Timeline, photos, and signed divorce papers. No note, just silence. I moved into my apartment that day, leaving behind not just the house, but the version of me that waited, hoped, forgave. She came back to find not confrontation, but closure. She chose fantasy over love. I chose freedom over illusion. And for the first time in months, the silence felt like peace.